Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a truth that most people never understand until they have suffered because of it. We are taught that if we give more attention, more affection, more messages, more reassurance, and more availability, we will naturally become more valuable to the other person. But human psychology doesn't work that way. What is always available is rarely appreciated. What is constantly chasing eventually loses its power. This isn't about playing games, it's about understanding the invisible laws that govern human behavior. One of the greatest mistakes a man can make is believing that constant presence creates deeper attraction. In reality, endless attention often removes mystery. When every thought is shared immediately, every message answered instantly, and every emotion displayed without restraint, there is nothing left for the other person to discover. Curiosity disappears, anticipation fades, the relationship slowly becomes predictable, and predictability is the silent enemy of fascination. Think about the people who have left the strongest impression on your life. Were they always available? Did they constantly seek your approval? Or did they possess a quiet confidence that made you wonder what they were thinking, what they were doing, and where their life was heading? Human beings are naturally drawn toward mystery because the mind cannot resist filling in the blanks. When information is incomplete, imagination begins to work. That imagination often becomes more powerful than reality itself. This is why silence, when used with maturity, carries enormous psychological weight. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is the discipline of refusing to react emotionally to every situation. While others panic, explain themselves endlessly, or demand attention, the emotionally disciplined person remains centered. That calmness communicates confidence without a single word. Now, understand this carefully. There is a massive difference between strategic silence and emotional manipulation. Immature people ignore others to punish them. Wise people create space because they value their own peace. One is driven by ego, the other is driven by self-respect. Never confuse these two. If your silence is meant to control someone else's emotions, you have already lost control of your own. Real power begins when your life becomes so meaningful that your attention becomes valuable. Instead of wondering why someone hasn't replied, you're building your future. Instead of checking your phone every few minutes, you're sharpening your skills, improving your health, expanding your knowledge, and creating opportunities. Suddenly, your absence is no longer a tactic. It is simply the natural result of living a purposeful life. People notice when your energy is no longer consumed by seeking validation. They sense the difference. Confidence cannot be faked because it reveals itself through patience. Desperation rushes. Confidence waits. Desperation demands answers. Confidence understands that what is meant to remain will remain. So never make the mistake of believing that your worth is measured by how much attention you can give someone. Your true value is measured by the quality of the life you continue building, even when no one is watching. And when your absence is the result of purpose instead of pride, it becomes far more powerful than endless presence ever could be. Remember this: the strongest presence in any relationship often belongs to the person who has mastered the power of absence. Now that you understand the power of absence, we have to confront an even deeper issue that quietly destroys countless relationships before they ever have a chance to grow. It is the desperate search for validation. Many people believe they are fighting for love, but in reality, they are fighting for approval. Those are two very different things. Love grows from mutual respect, while validation grows from insecurity. And insecurity has a way of revealing itself no matter how carefully you try to hide it. The moment you begin measuring your worth by someone else's attention, you hand over your emotional freedom. Suddenly, your mood depends on whether they text you back. Your confidence rises and falls based on how much affection they show. You replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you said the wrong thing. You become trapped in a prison that you built yourself because your happiness is no longer your own. This is where many men lose their strength without realizing it. They begin over-explaining every decision. They apologize for things that require no apology. They send another message after receiving no reply, hoping to regain attention. They rearrange their schedules, sacrifice their priorities, and slowly abandon the very qualities that once made them attractive. The tragedy is that they believe these actions demonstrate love when they actually communicate fear. Human psychology responds differently than most people expect. Confidence attracts because it signals emotional stability. Desperation pushes people away because it creates pressure. No one wants to feel responsible for another person's emotional security. Healthy relationships are built between two emotionally complete individuals, not between one person seeking approval and another expected to provide it. Instead of asking yourself, how can I make her choose me? Ask a far more powerful question, am I becoming the kind of man who chooses himself every single day? That question changes everything. It shifts your attention away from chasing someone else's acceptance and redirects it toward building your own character. When you invest your energy in your health, your discipline, your purpose, your financial growth, your knowledge, and your emotional intelligence, something remarkable happens. You stop needing constant reassurance because your confidence begins to come from evidence, not compliments. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes another brick in the foundation of self-respect. Every difficult challenge you overcome reminds you that your value is created from within, not assigned by someone else's opinion. This doesn't mean you become cold or emotionally unavailable. It means you become emotionally independent. There is a profound difference. An independent person can love deeply without becoming dependent. He can appreciate someone's presence without fearing their absence. He enjoys companionship, but he does not lose himself trying to keep it. Ironically, this is when people begin to notice you differently. There's a quiet strength in someone who is not constantly asking for recognition. They speak with intention instead of urgency. They listen more than they chase. They move through life with patience because they know their identity isn't hanging on someone else's response. Never confuse attention with affection. Someone may give you endless attention today and disappear tomorrow. But genuine respect is built over time through consistency, integrity, and emotional discipline. Those qualities cannot be borrowed, purchased, or demanded. They are earned by the way you choose to live every day. So stop chasing validation from people who cannot define your worth. Build a life so rich in purpose that approval becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. The moment you stop begging to be chosen is the moment you become someone impossible to overlook. And remember this, the man who no longer seeks validation becomes the man whose value speaks for itself. As you free yourself from the need for constant validation, you arrive at a place where very few people ever stand. This is the place of emotional detachment. Many misunderstand this concept. They imagine it means becoming cold, uncaring, or emotionally distant. That is not emotional detachment. True emotional detachment is the ability to experience your emotions without allowing them to control your decisions. It is remaining steady when everyone else is reacting. It is choosing wisdom over impulse, discipline over drama, and clarity over chaos. One of the greatest strengths a man can develop is the ability to remain calm when emotions are running high. Imagine a situation where a woman suddenly becomes distant, replies less often, or behaves differently than she did before. Most men immediately begin creating stories in their minds. They assume the worst. They send multiple messages, demand explanations, or desperately try to fix something they don't even understand. They react before they observe. But a man who has mastered emotional discipline does something different. He pauses. That pause changes everything. Instead of reacting from fear, he responds from awareness. He understands that not every silence is rejection. Not every disagreement is the end of a relationship. Not every emotional moment requires immediate action. He allows reality to reveal itself instead of forcing an answer through panic. The strongest people are not those who never feel emotion. They are those who refuse to become prisoners of it. They feel disappointment without becoming bitter. They experience rejection without losing self-respect. They encounter uncertainty without abandoning their purpose. Their emotions are real, but their emotions never become the captain of their life. This level of self-control creates something incredibly powerful. It makes you difficult to manipulate. People can only manipulate emotions they can predict. If they know your happiness depends entirely on their attention, they hold enormous influence over you. But when your confidence is rooted in your own character, your mission, and your values, emotional manipulation loses its power. You become anchored. You stop being pulled in every direction by someone else's moods or approval. There is another benefit to emotional detachment that many overlook. It improves your judgment. Emotional storms distort reality. Anger exaggerates problems. Fear invents threats that don't exist. Desperation convinces you to accept treatment you would normally reject. But a calm mind sees situations as they truly are. It notices patterns instead of isolated moments. It listens carefully before speaking. It understands that patience often reveals answers that force never can. This is why successful people in every area of life value emotional control so highly. Whether in business, leadership, friendships, or relationships, those who remain composed usually make better decisions. They don't waste energy proving themselves. They don't argue over every misunderstanding. They know that not every battle deserves their attention. Your peace becomes your greatest asset. Protect it fiercely. There will always be people who test your patience. Some will intentionally provoke you to measure your reaction. Others may withdraw attention, hoping you will chase them. The emotionally undisciplined person falls into every trap. The emotionally disciplined person simply observes, learns, and continues walking toward his purpose. Never confuse emotional discipline with emotional suppression. Ignoring your feelings is not strength. Understanding them without becoming controlled by them is strength. Face your emotions honestly, learn from them, and then refuse to let them dictate your future. The more control you gain over yourself, the less control anyone else has over you. That is the quiet power that transforms every relationship and every challenge you will ever face. Always remember, the greatest victory is never over another person. It is over the emotions that once ruled your life. Once you have mastered the art of emotional discipline, another lesson becomes essential. Every strategy has a proper place, and every strength can become a weakness if it is used without wisdom. The idea of ignoring someone has been misunderstood by countless people. Many assume that silence is always powerful, that distance always creates attraction, or that withholding attention is the answer to every problem. It is not. Power without judgment eventually becomes self-destruction. There is a profound difference between creating healthy distance and playing emotional games. Healthy distance comes from self-respect. Emotional games come from insecurity. One is focused on protecting your peace, while the other is obsessed with controlling another person's emotions. These two paths may appear similar on the surface, but they lead to completely different destinations. Ask yourself an honest question. Why are you becoming silent? Is it because you need time to think clearly, to focus on your purpose, and to avoid reacting emotionally? Or is it because you want the other person to panic, chase you, or feel guilty? Your answer reveals everything about your mindset. If your silence is designed to manipulate, you have already surrendered your inner strength. You are still allowing someone else to control your actions because everything you are doing is based on how you hope they will react. That is not confidence. That is dependence wearing the mask of power. Real confidence never needs to manufacture importance. It simply lives with purpose. There are moments when communication is the stronger choice. If someone genuinely cares about you and there is confusion, misunderstanding, or conflict, mature communication builds trust. Running away from every difficult conversation is not emotional intelligence. It is emotional avoidance. Strong people know when to remain silent, but they also know when honesty is necessary. Many relationships fail not because people speak too much, but because they refuse to speak when it truly matters. Pride replaces humility. Assumptions replace conversations. Silence becomes punishment instead of reflection. Two people begin creating stories in their minds that have nothing to do with reality, and eventually they become strangers despite standing only a few feet apart. Wisdom requires balance. There will also be relationships where distance is not only appropriate, it is necessary. If someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, manipulates your emotions, ignores your values, or constantly drains your energy, stepping away is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. You cannot build a peaceful life while constantly inviting chaos into it. Every time you tolerate repeated disrespect, you silently teach others how to treat you. This is why boundaries are so important. A boundary is not a threat, it is not revenge, it is simply a declaration that your self-respect is no longer negotiable. Mature people respect boundaries because they understand that healthy relationships require mutual respect. Those who become angry when you establish boundaries often benefited from the absence of them. As you grow, you will notice something remarkable. You no longer feel the need to prove your value to everyone. You stop arguing with people determined to misunderstand you. You stop chasing those who repeatedly choose distance. Instead, you invest your time in people who reciprocate respect, honesty, and effort. Life becomes much lighter when you realize that not every relationship is meant to be saved. Some people enter your life to teach you a lesson, not to stay forever. Accepting that truth requires courage, but it also creates freedom. Never use silence as a weapon against someone who loves you, and never fear walking away from someone who repeatedly refuses to respect you. The difference between those two choices is the difference between wisdom and ego. Remember this, true strength is not knowing how to ignore someone. It is knowing exactly when silence protects your dignity and when honesty protects your relationships. By this point, you have begun to understand that the greatest battle is never with another person. It is with yourself. Once you stop chasing validation, master your emotions, and learn the difference between wisdom and manipulation, you reach a level that few people ever experience. This is the level where you become difficult, almost impossible to manipulate, not because you have learned tricks, but because you have learned yourself. Manipulation only succeeds when it finds an emotional weakness it searches for: fear, loneliness, insecurity, or the desperate need to be accepted. If someone discovers that you are terrified of being abandoned, they can threaten to leave whenever they want control. If they realize your confidence depends on compliments, they can withhold affection until you begin chasing their approval. The greatest prison is not built with walls, it is built with emotional dependence. The solution is not to become suspicious of everyone, it is to become aware of yourself. Every time you react impulsively, ask yourself, what emotion is driving me? Is it fear? Is it pride? Is it jealousy? Is it the need to win? Most people never ask these questions. They simply react. And then they wonder why they keep repeating the same painful patterns. Awareness is the beginning of freedom. The moment you recognize your emotional triggers, they begin to lose their power. Instead of responding immediately, you create space between the feeling and the action. In that space, wisdom has a chance to speak. You no longer allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. This is why discipline is so valuable. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about training yourself to choose what benefits your future instead of what satisfies your emotions in the present moment. Every time you keep your word to yourself, you strengthen your character. Every early morning you refuse to waste, every workout you complete when you don't feel like it, every book you finish instead of scrolling endlessly through distractions. You are teaching your mind one powerful lesson: I am in control. That lesson changes every area of your life. People often think confidence comes from success, but true confidence comes from evidence. It comes from knowing that you can trust yourself. When life becomes difficult, you don't panic because you have already proven that you can overcome discomfort. Or you don't collapse under pressure because pressure has become familiar. Your strength is no longer based on circumstances. It is based on habits. As your self-respect grows, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to convince people to see your value. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop competing for attention because your focus has shifted toward building a meaningful life. Your purpose becomes louder than your opinions. There will always be people who attempt to influence your emotions. Some will flatter you to gain your trust. Others will criticize you to weaken your confidence. Some may alternate between affection and distance, hoping to keep you emotionally off balance. But none of these tactics work on a person who knows exactly who he is. The strongest man in the room is rarely the loudest. He doesn't need to dominate every conversation or prove every point. His confidence comes from quiet certainty. He understands that peace is more valuable than unnecessary conflict, and that emotional stability is worth protecting at all costs. Never forget that your greatest investment is not in changing another person, it is in developing yourself. Build your body, sharpen your mind, strengthen your values, and protect your integrity. The stronger your inner foundation becomes, the less the outside world can shake you. Remember this: the person who has mastered his own mind cannot be controlled by anyone else's games. As we bring this journey to its conclusion, I want you to step back and see the bigger picture. Everything we have discussed, silence, emotional discipline, self-respect, boundaries, and freedom from validation, is not really about learning how to ignore a woman. That is only the surface. The deeper lesson is learning how to build a life so meaningful, so disciplined, and so purposeful that your attention becomes one of your most valuable assets. When you understand this, everything changes. Far too many people wake up each morning with their minds focused on someone else's decisions. They wonder who texted them, who viewed their profile, who is thinking about them, or whether they are being appreciated. Their emotions become tied to circumstances they cannot control. Day after day, they surrender their peace to the opinions and actions of others. But the moment you reclaim ownership of your attention, you reclaim ownership of your life. Attention is one of the most valuable forms of energy you possess. Wherever your attention goes, your life follows. If you constantly invest it in chasing approval, your future will be built on insecurity. If you invest it in mastering yourself, learning new skills, improving your health, strengthening your finances, and pursuing meaningful goals, your future will be built on confidence and achievement. Think about the individuals who naturally command respect. They are rarely the ones demanding recognition. They are not desperately trying to impress everyone around them. Instead, they are focused on becoming excellent at what they do. Excellence has a magnetic quality. It attracts opportunities without begging for them. It earns respect without demanding it. It creates influence without forcing it. This is the kind of life you should pursue. Wake up each day with a mission that excites you more than anyone else's opinion. Build habits that make you proud when nobody is watching. Learn something every day that expands your perspective. Strengthen your body until discipline becomes part of your identity. Develop your character until honesty, patience, and courage become natural expressions of who you are. When your life is built on purpose, relationships become healthier. You stop expecting another person to complete you because you are already complete in your own direction. You appreciate companionship without becoming dependent on it. You give affection freely without sacrificing your dignity. You love without losing yourself. Ironically, this is the moment when people begin to see you differently. There is something unforgettable about a person whose confidence is quiet, whose actions are consistent, and whose emotions are under control. Such people don't chase attention because they understand that respect is never pursued. It is earned through the way they live every single day. There will always be distractions trying to pull you away from your purpose. There will always be moments of rejection, disappointment, misunderstanding, and emotional pain. But those moments no longer define you. They become temporary events instead of permanent identities. You continue moving forward because your direction is no longer determined by who stays or who leaves. Never forget that the greatest victory in life is becoming someone you genuinely admire when you look in the mirror. If you achieve that, no rejection can destroy your confidence, no silence can steal your peace, and no relationship can become the center of your identity. Build a life that speaks louder than your words. Let your discipline become your reputation. Let your purpose become your attraction. Let your character become your legacy. When you become a man of genuine value, you no longer need to convince anyone of your worth because your life becomes the evidence. And always remember this, the person who masters himself will never have to chase respect because true respect naturally follows those who live with purpose, discipline, and unwavering self-control.